Hello, Bigger Pockets community. Andrew Cushman here. Glad to be back to answer any of your questions on apartments, syndication, multifamily, real estate in general. Hope you all are doing well. Just in case, for those of you who don't know who I am, I won't give you the whole backstory. That's on BP episode 170 and 279. But basically, I used to be a chemical engineer. Had no real estate experience whatsoever. Learned how to flip houses in Southern California in 2007. Flipped houses through the Great Recession. It was a great time to get into real estate. We did really well. And then 2010, we said, hey, what's the next big thing? And we realized, well, man, all these foreclosures, if someone still has to live somewhere, they're going to go rent. So we said, well, it's apartments. We found a mentor to help us learn that business. But our first deal was 92 units in Macon, Georgia, on the other side of the country. And we syndicated that and realized that was a great business and have been doing it full time ever since, done about 1,800 units. I've slowed down acquisitions recently, unfortunately, but what we do have has been doing well, and we're looking forward to the opportunities that have been coming. So, like I said, I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Go ahead and put them in the live comments. Don't forget to like and share and do all of that, and hopefully we can create some value today. And I do want to thank those who put their questions into the comments in advance on Instagram. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and start with one of those. So we have, let's see, Lit Dad. Sounds like a fun guy. How do I get started syndicating with no money and no experience? Well, the first thing is what you're already doing, and that's get involved in a community like Bigger Pockets where you can learn from and interact with and meet potential partners of people who are already like-minded and have those same type of goals and want to get started. The other thing too is, if you've got no money and no experience, the beauty of syndication is that you can do big deals without having the money. So when I did that, my first ever deal, which was that 92 unit property, we needed $1.2 million. I did not have that. So that's how we got into the syndication. It's like, well, if I can educate myself and be an expert at finding deals and rehabbing them and turning them around, and I can put in that time and that effort and the energy, and I will fly out there and I'll visit and I'll do it and I'll direct people and I'll stay there for a few days and all of that, then people who have the money but not the time or those skills or even the desire to do that, well, they bring the money, I bring all those other things, and you've got a partnership that works, right? And that's the beauty of syndication. So you do need to have at least one element because that's the value that you're bringing to the table. So if you don't have the money, that's actually probably the easiest one to solve because you can find people who do have the money and don't, again, have the desire to spend, 50 hours a week looking at deals. But that means you have to go get the experience. And that's, through education, that's through analyzing deals. And to, you can't, you can't not jump in with no value because you've got to be able to show, that you are a critical piece. But you also don't have to go do, 1,000 units before you can raise money, right? As you're interacting in forums or at meetups and talking with people about real estate, you can go ahead and you'll maybe find someone with more experience and partner with them, right? So let's just say you find a deal and great, you've got a great deal, but you still don't quite have enough experience. So you can bring someone on or partner with somebody or bring that deal to somebody who has a lot more experience. And now you've formed a partnership with them and you have started building a network of people to raise money from, and you put those pieces together. And then also, I don't know what market you're in, but some of the best investments may not be in your market. So just start with books like David Green's Long Distance Real Estate Investing. Brandon Turner's done a bunch of great books on various aspects of real estate. Dave Lindahl's 2 books are really good for multifamily. It's Emerging Market and Multifamily Millions. And that's a great place to start. So, all right, a good question. And okay, wow, I've got all kinds of great questions here. Hey, and also Matthew Cooper, hello from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you, Matthew, for telling us where you were from. I actually forgot to mention that. I love seeing where people are from. We've had people from Israel and Germany. I'm still waiting to get someone from Antarctica. I know the odds are low, but someday it's going to happen. I know it will. All right, so let's see. We'll pick a question. This one is probably on a lot of people's mind. Sorry, Matthew. Since I mentioned you and you did tell me you were from Atlanta, I'm going to go to your question. Then I'm going to go to Patrick's question. So Matthew Cooper, what's the best way to find a partner and add value as a newbie with no syndication experience? The first thing I would ask, Matthew, is what are your strengths and what are you going to enjoy doing? Are you going to enjoy sitting in front of a spreadsheet and analyzing a P&L? Are you going to enjoy spending half the day on the phone with brokers? Are you going to enjoy doing property tours? Are you going to enjoy talking with investors and finding out what they're looking for? So figure out, the first thing to do is figure out what you think you're really good at and you would enjoy, and develop that as your value add, right? And then you can go partner with somebody who has the rest of it. So as an example, let's say, and I have no idea what your strengths are, but let's say you develop a skill, let's say you're a very highly analytical person and you're really good at analyzing deals. And you start looking at deals and you find one and it's a great deal, but you don't have the money, you don't have the other pieces. If you were to find a 120 unit property in Atlanta and you underwrite it and you go, wow, this is a great deal, and you were to bring it to me and I underwrite it and it actually really is a great deal and I want to do it, you just found a partner for that deal. So that's how you do it. You figure out what you like, what you can be good at, and then go find someone where they need that skill that you either have or developed. And that's how the best partnerships work. And that's that's really what syndication is. I mean, we talk about it in terms of pooling money, and that is certainly a huge piece of it. But as a lone person, you're only going to go so far. You also want to look at it as pooling talent, and you figure out what yours is, and then just keep networking and finding people and figure out who needs the talent you have, and you're going to be off to a great start. So excellent question. All right, let me scroll back up. Where was that question? Okay, Patrick S. Do you think the market will tank? Should I wait a bit more longer? I guess it depends. To go a little Bill Clinton on everybody, it depends on what your definition of tank is. There certainly will be some weakness. There already is weakness. It's starting to show up. It largely depends on what market you're in and what segment you're in, right? So if you're looking at single family in California, that is on fire right now. Multiple offers. Pricing is actually, I believe, still going up because interest rates are low. People who do still have jobs are trying to get houses because there's been a shortage of houses for years. And now instead of getting 20 bids on a house, they're getting 5 bids. Well, guess what? That's still enough to keep pricing high and to keep it competitive. And, big picture, we have a nationwide housing shortage, and this is actually going to exacerbate that and make it worse. With that said, we are at a very high level of unemployment right now. That is being kind of bandaged over by the stimulus money and the expanded unemployment. And that has been very helpful for keeping people in their rentals and in their houses. If the government expands that and continues it, then that will certainly help support the market. But we are seeing already heavy distress in retail for all those businesses that are closed or can't operate at full capacity. Apartments, generally speaking, or even single family rentals, it really depends on your market. In Los Angeles, there's some issues with, they've made announcements that no one has to pay rent. And that has caused some issues. There's various moratoriums in different places in the country. But as a whole, multifamily is actually doing quite well. If you had been, if you had been exiled on a small island in the Pacific for the last 3 months, and you came back today and looked at our financials, you'd be like, "Cool, everything's good, nothing to worry about." You would have no clue that there's a pandemic and economic disaster going on because of the stimulus. With all of that said, I do believe we're going to see a possibly significant weakness in all forms of real estate, more so retail and then commercial and then multifamily. We're already seeing it in the smaller multifamily properties, especially the C's and the D's where you don't have professional management. There's already some distress and lower collections showing up there. I've talked to some owners who have seen 10, 20, 30, in one case, 40% decline in collections. The B class stuff in the middle is actually doing great so far. And the really expensive luxury stuff is starting to suffer because even people who still have their jobs, they're getting a little nervous and saying, well, yeah, I don't know if I want to pay $3,000 a month to live in a studio in Buckhead. I'm going to go pay $1,800 for this nice B-class property with tons of amenities in the suburbs. So, and then also in deals that we're looking at now and talking with brokers, pricing is off in a lot of cases 10 to 15% already. So if a deal would have traded 4 months ago at 10 million, today it might trade for 8.5 or 9. That's because buyers are looking forward saying this looks really uncertain. And then also debt has gotten more challenging. They're requiring a lot more reserves and things like that. So that lowers the return. Will we see a collapse like we saw last time? My guess would be no. The reason is last time around real estate caused the recession and there was a liquidity crisis. This time we have even more of a housing shortage than last time. Lending has generally been actually very responsible, and we're entering this with occupancy and collections at a higher level than when we entered the last recession. And then another big wild card is there's a ton of liquidity on the sidelines just waiting to jump into real estate, and especially apartments. So that will support the pricing in the apartment market. So the short answer to that long-winded one is there's a lot of different factors at play. We've never seen this arrangement of factors in modern history. And so it's kind of tough to predict how it's all going to play out. The short version is we will see some kind of distress, some kind of dip in the market. How deep, I don't know. We are still making offers on deals, but probably only 10% of what we did 4 months ago, volume-wise. And I really think the biggest opportunities are going to start showing up in 2021. Last time around, the recession started in late 2007, and the deals came in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. So now is the time to educate, find partners, build systems, and get ready to jump on it. And if you see a great deal now, do it. That's fine. But just in general, keep a good principle to remember is you would rather regret the deal you didn't do than regret the deal that you did do. So good question. And I want to take an extra couple of minutes to answer that because I'm sure that's, well, I just know from talking with people, that's definitely on a lot of people's mind. And hey, Patrick from Germany, awesome. Thanks for chiming in. All right, well, we got lots of other questions here. Let's see, we've got Andre from LA. Thanks for jumping on. Good to see you here. Cody, do you have any tips for real estate in Canada? I don't know that market. What I would do is I would go ahead and get on Bigger Pockets and ask for who's operating in Canada, because I know I have heard some guests on the podcast who do real estate in Canada and have been really successful with it. So I would start with Bigger Pockets. And then also, I don't know if you're interested in doing real estate in the United States. You can do it from Canada. I've known people who have. And there's also a mastermind that I'm aware of called M1. And they've got a lot of people in Canada, and some of them are doing real estate. So those are some places I would start. Let me see here. We've got Joe. Hello from Carolina Beach, North Carolina. I love North Carolina for both pleasure and business. And Yankee Doodle. I'm gonna jump on. I love the name, so we're gonna go answer that question real fast. What cash-on-cash return do you look for? Historically speaking, so there's two types of cash-on-cash return. There's what you call the project level or property level cash-on-cash, and then there's the investor level, right? So what that means is if let's just say you've got a property that takes $1 million of investment, and you take $1 million out of your bank account and you just put it in and you buy it, $1 million, right? And it returns $100,000 a year. That is a 10% cash on cash return at the at the property or investment level, because the property itself is generating 10%. Now, if you syndicated that and you're giving 75% to investors, 75% of 100,000 is 75,000. They put in $1 million. Those investors are getting a 7.5% cash on cash return. So there's two ways to look at it, right? If it's just your property, it's just cash divided by the amount you put in. If you're syndicating, you've got that split to factor in. So with that said, up until 4 months ago, we were looking at properties that would cash on cash return probably around 10% and hopefully getting up to 12 or 13 after a couple of years. And then, that means the investors are getting a net 8, 9, 10%. Now, candidly, we're still, it's, what to underwrite to is changing day to day. We've probably bumped that up a little bit because we want to say, all right, well, what happens if rents go down 10%? What does the cash flow look like then? We still want to make sure we have a good margin, not only to pay investors, but just to be able to pay the bills and the mortgage and all of that. So again, historically, if you can consistently get investors, 8 to 12%, especially on something that does relatively low risk as apartments, that's usually a successful property, and most people consider that to be a good return. So, all right. Let's see. Akiem Jones. Do you find that investors are more interested in monthly cash flow or possibility of lump sum return from increasing the property value and selling after 5 to 10 years? The answer is yes. Different people are focused on both different aspects of that. So for our investor, our investor group, it's probably split about 50-50. We have about half of them that are more interested in the checks they get every quarter. And then we have another group, probably the other half, where they're saying, hey, I've got a great job or a great income. I'm not really worried about the cash flow because I don't need it. It's nice, but I'm excited about getting an extra 50 or 100% when we sell this thing. And so you bring up a really good point is know your investors, know what they're looking for, know how you can best serve them. And do structure your deals so that it's most beneficial to them. And then, the court and buy those deals right, operate those deals right, and sell them right, and hit those targets, and you'll have a happy investor group and a successful business. So yeah, you got to ask them that question. And that's actually when we bring on a new investor, we do a questionnaire, and then we do a phone interview. And that is one of the questions we ask is, well, what's more important to you? Is it cash flow or is it capital appreciation? And then going back to the question we just discussed, we also ask them, well, what are your return expectations, right? So if someone tells me, well, I'm hoping to get 23% cash on cash returns starting, from the first day I put in my money, I'm gonna say, well, we're not for you, because that's probably not going to happen. But if someone's like, well, 6 to 8%, and then hopefully a big profit on the end, or 8 to 10, that's more of a realistic expectation. So you're definitely on track, and that is a question to just ask of each investor that you talk to. So, alrighty, get Greg, hello from Little Rock, Arkansas. Actually, when I got started, I spent a couple of years looking at some properties in Little Rock, put in some offers, came really close on a couple. I actually, Little Rock was a nice place to visit. So good to have you on, Greg. All right, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but we're going to go to YouTube. It is dhruv sarang. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now? Well, in regards to real estate investing, I would tell myself to, number one, go into B class right away instead of C class. Most of us, myself included, start in C class because it's cheaper and it looks better on paper. And when I look back over the 13 years or so that I've been in real estate, and I followed deals that we either did or did not do, the B class properties made just as much, if not more money with less effort, less headache, and less risk. So I would go straight to B class and skip going into C. C always looks better on a spreadsheet, but keep in mind the grass is always greener over the septic tank. It's just generally not worth it. And again, I've had some great success with C properties. There's lots of people that is their focus. They do well. It is just a different business model, more management intensive, a little bit more headache, more delinquency, and a little bit higher risk. Yeah, I'm not saying don't ever do it, but if I were to go back to myself, I'd be like, go buy those Bs. Don't worry about the Cs. The other thing I would do is I would bring on more partners and more. I say employees, but I really see employees more as partners and not as do this or do that. But I would bring more people onto my team. That's what I'm looking for. I would have brought more people onto my team earlier that have an active role. I'm fortunate in that I did bring on an incredible group of mentors early on. So I would also tell my younger self, hey, good job for doing that. But what I didn't do is build an operational team early enough. I probably did too much of it myself, and then only later in my real estate career brought on more people that were an active part of the team. That's something I would do sooner. So those are some of the things. Yeah, so a great question though. Let's see here. Victor from North Carolina, do you have any thoughts about mastermind groups? I used to be a mastermind skeptic, thought they were kind of silly, basically saw them as, adult frats, and I was just like, ain't no way I'm paying for friends, right? In fact, where I went to school, they actually used to have t-shirts that said, rent a friend, join a frat. I have been fully converted and now have drunk the Kool-Aid. Masterminds have been a huge benefit to my growth, not only just in a real estate career, but in many other aspects of life. You guys know, most of you guys, if you're regular Bigger Pockets listeners, you've heard of, GoBundance. I was fortunate enough to be one of the founding members of that, I guess about 8 years ago. And, Brandon's in that now, and David Green's in that. I've learned so much and grown so much in the accountability. I'm also involved in some other masterminds that are, so like GoBundance is focused on all aspects of life, but I'm also in one that is focused just on multifamily. And so whether you're in multifamily or single family, you're doing BRRRR, you're doing wholesaling, there's lots of groups out there that I would encourage you to get into so that you have people. That's where you find mentors. That's where you find partners. That's where you find investors. You get new ideas. It expands your thinking. So yeah, I'm a big fan of masterminds. I'm in several. I'm actually starting one, and I found the more time that I'm involved with other people who are like-minded and hopefully smarter than I am, which isn't too hard to find people that fit that category, but who are more experienced and smarter than I am, the more I'm going to grow and be pushed. So I'm a big favor of masterminds, and I'm in some where it's free and it's just 8 of us who just come together once a month to share and to hold each other accountable. And then I'm in other ones where I pay a pretty good amount of money to be a member, but the value that I get in return is far greater than the cost. And look at Bigger Pockets, in a sense, is a mastermind with millions of people in it, right? It's a community where you can post, you can get feedback, you can find partners, you can get investors. You can either, if there's something in real estate that you want to do, there's probably 1,000 people on Bigger Pockets who've already figured it out and just nailed it. And all you got to do is find a couple of those to connect with. So good question. Let's see. Glenn Gray, I own a rental property in a 6-unit apartment building. Congratulations for getting going. Hopefully your properties are doing well. JM, what's the minimum optimum amount of units? That depends heavily on what your goals are. And now I'm going to guess that your question might relate to economies of scale and running a property efficiently. So for us, we try to look at properties that are a minimum of 80 units. And then we like stuff that's from 80 to about 240 units, because those properties have enough income to easily support full-time on-site staff, right? And that's what we want. We want to know we have a manager who's there all the time, and a maintenance guy who's there all the time. So if you're looking for that kind of efficiency, 80 units on up. Going below that, I would say maybe 40 to 80 units. You can still hire on-site staff, and if we happen to be looking at a property that's that size, there's a couple of ways to do it. Number one, you can say, hey, I'm going to bring this maintenance person on or whatever, and their job isn't going to just be maintenance. It's going to be doing the landscaping. It's going to be turning units. It's going to be doing upgrades. And we actually have a property like that where we would normally never buy something that's 56 units, but it was a beautiful property in a great submarket of Atlanta. And it was just a mile and a half down the road from another property that we owned that was larger. And we're like, hey, we can kind of run these together. Well, the maintenance guy at that property is a master tradesman. And normally a property that small couldn't afford a guy like that. But what we did is say, look, you're a great person. We want to keep you here. So he does maintenance. He does all of our unit upgrades. He replaces the siding. I mean, the guy does everything, which means, yes, his payroll is kind of heavy on the property, but we don't have to use third-party vendors. And that's where expenses can really get run up, right? If you need to call a plumber who's going to charge you $250 for a visit, but your guy can do it for 30 minutes and a $5 piece of pipe, that's a big savings. So that's what you can do there. If you're going smaller, 6 units, 10 units, maybe you can share operations with some other owners nearby. Find a management company that specializes in those smaller properties, because they'll know how to divvy it up. And really, the minimum optimum amount of units, outside of the whole efficiency conversation, the minimum optimum units is really, to me, whatever is the biggest property that you can take down without overstretching yourself, and be able to continue moving forward and building your portfolio. That's really the minimum number of units. So the things I just discussed, those are just various challenges and hurdles, but there's almost always a way around it. And so really the minimum number of units is whatever gets you to your goal the fastest. So, all right. Hey, Phil Cameron, good to see you, my friend. The grass is always greener over the septic tank. Man, Phil is everywhere. He is on it. Love that t-shirt too. All right. Josh, thanks for the props. Josh McKellen, appreciate it. Good to see you here as well. AGMS, Tacoma, Washington. Right before this call, I was actually just talking with a banker up there. Is a duplex a good investment property if you're starting by yourself? Absolutely. One of the great things about duplex too is you can where you can move in one side and rent out the other side, and hopefully cover the mortgage. So again, the best investment is the one that gets you started. For us, again, it just happened to be a 92 unit. And candidly, the reason that we ended up with that property is probably because the broker saw a sucker coming and like, oh, this guy will buy this. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? We had a mentor and we kind of already had an investor base, so we were able to do that. And would I do that deal today? Absolutely not. But I'm so glad that we did, because it got us started. So a duplex, if that is, if you can make a duplex work in your market, and it's something that you can do and that you can cash flow, and you have the reserves to be able to hold it if you get into a little bit of a rough spot or something like that, then yeah, absolutely. If you go back to the Bigger Pockets podcast, there's a long list of people that started from a duplex. In fact, Brandon, of course, has a term for it. I don't know if it's the stacking. I think he calls it stacking, but you get a duplex, right? Then the next year you get a fourplex, and then the next you get an 8, and then the next 16, and then the next 32. And all of a sudden you're doing big deals and you got a big portfolio. So yes, a duplex can be great. All right. Let's see. We'll pick another question here. Let's see. Manju Shetty, any tips for a remote investor who wants to be as actively involved as possible in maintenance. I would ask, why do you want to be actively involved in maintenance? I mean, and if you can post that, while I'm talking, I'll be happy to maybe narrow that down a little bit. As an investor or somebody who is trying to grow a portfolio, and I don't know if you have another job or income or anything like that, your identity should be investor, not maintenance person. And if you're concerned, if the reason you want to be involved in maintenance is, you're concerned about theft or someone not doing it right, then that comes down to first hiring the right people that are skilled and that you can trust. And then two, putting the right management systems in place so that if they don't perform or they're dishonest or lazy or whatever, you can figure that out pretty quickly and then replace them. And then, I've mentioned this before, I am not maintenance oriented. I am lucky to be able to use a screwdriver and a hammer, and that's about as complicated as I can get. I get confused just by the push button start cars now. Like, I'm trying to put a key in and I don't know what to do. So yet I can still have properties that have great maintenance because we make sure that we hire people that are skilled and trustworthy. And as an investor, you really don't want to be getting into maintenance. Now, if it's just something that you enjoy, and you enjoy the hands-on aspect of it, then you're probably just going to need to buy properties that are close by. So let me see here. Okay, so thank you, Manju, for follow-up. I want to do that to learn the craft so that I can do it full-time sometime. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, again, you know what? You can learn lots on YouTube, but maintenance certainly seems to me to be something that actual hands-on is where you really learn it. So maybe you can either just physically go to the market you're investing in, or try to figure out a way to invest in your market. And if you can't do that, find somebody who maybe is, and see if you can add value to their business by helping with maintenance and learn it that way. And who knows, where that partnership could lead. So, and thank you for the follow-up and clarifying. So, all right, let me see here. Bryan James, hey, don't forget to let us know where you're from, and remember, share and like so that we can keep coming back. Let me see here. So we've got Bryan James. Do you require renters to have renter's insurance? We do. And for those who aren't familiar with renter's insurance, if you're an owner of a property, you have property insurance and liability insurance. The liability insurance covers you, or is supposed to cover you, if someone slips on the stairs and sues you, or the dog bites them, and that's what liability covers you for. Property insurance is if a storm damages the roof, or the kitchen fire burns the place down, or something like that, right? So damage to the physical asset. What is not covered is the renter's property and some of the internal stuff in the unit. And so what we do is we have a bulk policy for each asset, and it works out to I don't know the exact numbers, but usually like $9 or $10 a month per renter. And then that's a fee that we add on to the monthly bill. So if the rent is $900, water might be $40, renter's insurance might be $11, and then $5 for something for trash or whatever. And so and then we add that together, and the resident gets billed for that. So we do require it, and then they pay for it. And I'm not an expert in insurance, but what that can also do is we've had situations where a resident, there was a fire and the resident was clearly at fault. Like, it was their negligence. It wasn't we had an electrical problem, or it wasn't something that had anything to do with us. The resident very clearly caused the fire. And what we are able to do is we're able to file a claim with that resident's renter's insurance. And so then they pay for the damage. And the benefit of that is twofold. Number one, most commercial policies for the whole property, they have huge deductibles, right? Even a small deductible might be $25,000, right? So if you got $20,000 in fire damage, That's out of your pocket. So number one, it helps eliminate the problem with deductibles. Number two is if you file a claim on the renter's insurance, it doesn't show up on your loss runs on your property insurance. And your loss runs, that's basically just the history of claims that you've had. The more claims you have on your history, the higher your insurance rates and the more trouble that you're going to get, in some cases, even getting insurance, right? So you really want to keep those clean. So renter's insurance benefits you significantly in those two ways. So good question. That doesn't come up too often. And I saw somebody earlier posted about, well, hey, what questions do people not ask that they should ask? That's actually one of them. That was a good one. So, all right, we got lots of questions. I'm going to take a sip of coffee here and then pick one. Actually, this one's quick and easy. Manju, again, do you recommend umbrella insurance? Yes, we do. We carry pretty high levels of umbrella insurance on all properties because it depends on your limits, but most liability policies are going to be for $1 or $2 million. And there have been situations, fortunately not for us, but I have been aware of other situations where people have been sued for far more than that, or judgments have exceeded that, and an umbrella policy can fill that gap. Or if there's something that maybe the primary insurer doesn't cover or tries to get out of, that umbrella policy can help you. So I do highly recommend umbrella policies. We always do that on our properties. And generally speaking, they're fairly low cost because they're seeing it as well. They're kind of the last stop, right? There's a couple other policies below them. So we see them as very much worth the expense. So, all right, now I'm going to take my sip of coffee and be right back. Oh, Neil, thank you for bringing that up. No investor left behind. Sorry, I didn't clarify that. What is an A, B, and C property? Can you please explain? See this. So an A property is generally, and this varies by market, right? An A property in Atlanta would not necessarily be an A property in San Francisco or Los Angeles, but an A property is generally something that is pretty new, built in the last 10 years. Luxury finishes, so maybe like nice granite countertops, stainless steel, probably located downtown or close to downtown, has all the new amenities, smart locks, Nest smart homes, all that kind of stuff, your most expensive stuff. B class is generally anywhere from, again, it depends on the market, but anywhere from maybe 10 to 20 years old down to 30 or 40 years old. And there's some older properties that have been upgraded and brought back from C to B. So your B is kind of your more affordable workforce housing. It's kind of like the big chunk in the middle where most people living there, they could pay more somewhere else, but they don't want to, or maybe they could get a house, but they just don't want to. And then there's others that, getting a house would be a stretch, but they can easily afford the apartment. They have a good job. Maybe they manage a Verizon store or something like that. And then C class generally is that's generally renters for life, right? That's usually people who can't get a house. Maybe they work two jobs, a little bit lower income compared to B and C. And people that are just working hard and to have to make ends meet, right? They're working, like I said, they might be working 2-3 jobs just to pay the rent and the car insurance and all those kind of things. D class properties is, which I didn't mention before. That's basically you want to be packing heat if you show up. That's your high crime, high delinquency, high headache type properties. So yeah, so that's A, B, and C. And again, it's a little bit vague of a definition. You talk to, one broker will say this is a B plus, and you'll look at it and go, I think that's a B minus. It's definitely a bit subjective, but that's kind of the general gist of it. So, all right, good question. Let me see here. We've got quite a few more. Let's see. All right. Oh, and yes, Brandon, what I was talking about before, Brandon does. He calls that the stack, going from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. If you write that down, you will see that it does not take you very many years to start getting to some big properties. So, Charlie, hey, thanks for the shout out. Appreciate it. Let's see. JM, what do you believe to be the best states for syndications in post-pandemic environment? Well, I don't know what post-pandemic environment looks like just yet because we aren't quite there, but I can tell you that some of the what I call legislative risk in places like California and New York is pretty scary. We've got bills out here in California where they're talking about rent. Where rent doesn't have to be paid for 15 months. You can't evict someone for not paying that rent, and you can't go out. You can't try to collect that, right? And they have 30 years to pay it back. Which I understand the intent, but how does that work as a property owner, right? If you've got people who skip a year's worth of rent, how do you pay your mortgage and your bills? How does that property not fall into disrepair? Most landlords, contrary to popular belief, are not billionaires floating around their yachts. The average landlord has a handful of properties. They're doing okay, but they don't have the reserves to just pay a mortgage for free for 12 months. So you see a lot of stuff like that in places like California, in addition to rent control. Same thing in New York, Washington State. So, I look for markets where it is business and landlord friendly, or at least balanced. And really that's kind of before and after pandemic. And so the pandemic makes me look even more carefully at markets where there's that kind of legislative risk of, is the state going to jump in and do something crazy to make my life as a landlord not only difficult, but frankly, impossible. So sorry, good question. And I want to jump back over and grab a couple from the Instagram, because I appreciate the folks that went ahead and posted that. So let's see. So Keith Kellermeyer, what key 3 things should you look for in an attorney to help you put together syndication contracts? Well, the thing about attorneys is 99% of them give the rest of them a bad name. No, just kidding. Don't mean to offend the attorneys. Some of my best friends are attorneys. No, we've got great attorneys on our team. They are a critical piece. So when we're looking for an attorney to put together syndication contracts, and actually, I want to specify that a little further. If you're buying multifamily, you've got 2 types of attorneys, right? You've got your syndication attorney, and then you've got your purchase and sale agreement attorney. And those are really 2 different functions. And so we have 2 different attorneys for that. So for the syndication side, you want somebody that has long-term experience focusing on syndication. You don't want a divorce attorney who also does syndications and contracts and all that kind of stuff. You want somebody who just does syndication paperwork and legal work, someone who focuses on it and they've had a lot of experience. I would pick somebody who you can get a referral from. And I'll tell you, I use Gene Trowbridge. I've used him since day one. He's been fantastic. He's easy to find, so you can just Google him. And he literally was I think he was the first guy to write a book on syndication and how it works. So someone with experience, a good reputation, and ideally that you can get referred to you. And then on the contract side, you want an attorney that ideally is in the state that you're buying a property, because each state has its own funky little rules about how contracts work and what's allowed, what's not allowed, jurisdiction, all kinds of weird stuff. So you want an attorney that's based in, or at least very familiar with, and does a lot of work in whatever state you're buying your property in. And then the same rules apply. You want to try to get good referrals. You want to talk to them about their history, how long have they been doing it, how many deals. And good attorneys are definitely a key piece of this business, and we're very thankful to have the relationships with the ones that we do have. So, all right, let's see. We'll go back. We got lots of live questions, so let me see here. Hardik, is that Akia? I apologize in advance. I'm not sure I did not get that right. Would you suggest, sounds like a follow-up question to what we were saying earlier, would you suggest starting with one B-class apartment without any cash flow, only for loan pay down and possible long-term appreciation? No. Definitely not in this market. Now, I mean, if you buy a a single family rental or something like that, and you're in a market like California or any of these other fast appreciating markets, and it breaks even and pays down the mortgage, and 10 years later it's worth twice as much, then obviously that can work really, really well. As long as you have the financial wherewithal that if it goes vacant for a couple of months, or you get a tenant who's a professional tenant and they stop paying, it takes you, as in California, 9 months to get them out. Do you have the financial capability to keep paying that mortgage and not have that take you down, right? That's the case where, that can work out well. Because again, like you alluded to, one of the beautiful things about real estate is as long as you don't lose it, if you hold on to it long enough and you're not in a long-term decaying market like Detroit has been in the past, you're going to win. You're going to come out okay. I would not do that with any significant sized property, apartment complex or anything like that. The reason being, especially at this point in the cycle, is cash flow. Appreciation and equity is what really accelerates your wealth, but cash flow is what allows you to do that. Meaning, you can't hold onto a property if you can't pay the bills, right? When you lose in the real estate game is when you lose the property. And when I look at our apartment complexes, would I be able? I would not be able to survive very long if we're down. We've sold a lot of stuff recently, so we're down to about 1,000 units. If those 1,000 units, if I had to pay the mortgages personally and all the, I'd be gone pretty quick, right? And of course, now each property we have significant reserves and all that, so that we hopefully would never get to that kind of point. But if those properties had zero cash flow, it would be game over very quickly. When we get into a recession, I mean, if you're at zero cash flow and rents go down 8 or 10%, now you're at a huge negative cash flow. And not only is that going to suck money out of your account, even if you don't lose the property, there's an opportunity cost. Now you're feeding this property instead of investing somewhere else. You've got the cost of the energy, of your time, the stress. So no, I would not recommend doing that. Cash flow is what protects you and allows you to benefit from that long-term appreciation and mortgage pay down. So, all right, let me see. We have, okay, what's the best? All right, Neil again. Hello from Chicago. What price do you consider a good purchase price compared to market price? How much less percent than market price? Again, depends on your market. And I actually tend not to focus too much on what the ask price or the list price is, right? David and Brandon actually were just talking about this a week or two ago about someone who got a deal off the MLS. And this tends to happen more on smaller properties than it does on large ones. The price that's published or the price that's being asked, that price could be way too low. And so if I underwrite a deal and I can hit all of my return goals and and it's a great investment, and that's at the price that they're asking, yeah, I might offer a little bit less just to see if I can get it for less, but I'll happily pay full asking price if it's just because they mispriced it and it hits my goals, right? So the key is to really not focus on what they're asking. The key is to just focus on what price gives you the returns that you need to get and also gives you a safe basis heading into a likely significant recession. With that said, what we're actually seeing in the market today is there seems to be about a 10 to 15% gap or spread between what buyers are offering and what sellers are asking for. The reason for that is buyers are looking forward into a recession going, this looks scary, I can't pay as much, and then debt's more expensive right now because of reserves. But sellers are going, well, sellers are looking back 4 months to that pricing, and they're saying, well, my operations haven't changed. In fact, May was the best month I've had in a long time. I'm not lowering my price. And so you got a bit of a stalemate. We put in an offer a couple of days ago that was 17% below asking, which is a pretty big gap. Normally, we wouldn't necessarily do that. But what we do is we have the conversation with the broker. And we say, hey, look, we're probably too far off. We're at this price at 17% below what they're looking for. We don't want to offend anybody. So it's probably just, if we'll put in the offer if you'd like us to, but, we understand if not. And then we proceed based on their guidance. In that case, he said, you know what, we got another offer that's higher. But if that doesn't work out, then you know what, they may consider this. So yeah, please put in the offer. So we put in an offer at 17% below what they were asking. And we know if we were to get it at that price, even heading into a recession, it would be a great deal that will cash flow, and we'll be happy to hold on to it, even if things get pretty rough. So good question. So, all right. Well, we are getting close to the end of our call. So if you've been hanging on to any questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments. I'll try to get through them relatively quickly if I can. So let me take another one, and then we'll wrap up after another question or two. So, all right. Lil said 41. How can I go from having single family rental properties to raising capital for apartments? Number one is assuming your single family rentals have gone well, use that as your track record, right? And go find let's say you're looking for a 10 unit, and find a 10 unit in your market, underwrite it, make sure it's a good deal. And then if you're talking to investors to raise capital from to help you buy that 10 unit, you can say, look, here's this 10 unit property. I've underwritten it. Here's why it's a great deal. I have, 3 or 5 or whatever your number is, other single family rental properties in this same market. I've had them for this long. They're doing great. This is why I believe in the market. And this 10 unit is even better than my single families because it's all consolidated under one roof. It's more efficient, and it'll be even more effective and easier to manage than my single family. So that's kind of the short version of how I would prepare that, put that together, and have that conversation. Let's see here. Let's see what. All right, Aditya, hello to you as well. Let us know where you're from. Thank you. You say you're very new to this channel, but thanks for jumping on. Hopefully this is helping out. Let's see, JM. What's the best way to engage and make investors, for instance, in the BP community, interested in the deal brought to them? What would be the key points to highlight? The key point, keep in mind, that the best way to get investors or anybody interested or involved is to really find out what they're looking for and find people who what you're offering fills the need that they have, right? So we talked about earlier in this call, do investors like cash flow or appreciation? And the answer is, well, both, right? Yes, it depends. Half of them are one, half the other. So if you're talking to people who are really interested in cash flow, and you find a deal that has great cash flow, then that's probably going to be part of how you lead the conversation. If you find a property that maybe is distressed and doesn't have good cash flow, but there's huge upside by repositioning it, and then you'll have a significant equity gain, then maybe that leads the conversation. And then also highlight, your experience, your background, your capabilities. And if you don't have a lot of that, then you highlight the capabilities and experience of the partners that you've brought on to fill those gaps, right? So like when I did my first deal at 92 units, I had no rental experience and no multifamily experience. All I'd done is flip houses, right? So part of how I was able to bring on investors is one, I pointed to my flipping history. Said, look, we flipped in an incredibly difficult market time, and we never lost money on a flip. We're very diligent in putting our deals together, and here's our track record. And then to kind of answer, well, yeah, that's great, but now you're buying a 92 unit apartment complex. That's like a whole different thing. What makes me think you're going to be any good at that? I was able to point to our mentor who had already done 800 units and was guiding us through that process, right? So I made sure that, number one, I was tailoring the message to the audience I was talking to. And then I made sure that I had filled any weak points that I had, so that number one, it would increase my odds of success. And then two, it would help kind of answer those questions and make people feel comfortable investing with us. So good question. All right, we'll take this last question here. Harsh, how do you structure the guarantor on the loan? How do you get around net worth requirements from lenders with multiple partners? Generally speaking, you don't get around them, but what you can do is you can bring on what you call balance sheet partners. So that's those folks that have large net worths and are willing to sign on the loan for you or with you, and the bank will accept that. And they either may do that because they're a friend or a partner, and sometimes, some cases, you pay them for that, right? You may pay them. A very common one is to pay somebody 1% of the loan balance in order to sign on so that you can get that loan, because it's a huge benefit to you, because if it means you can do a deal versus not doing a deal, it's worth paying that person a fee. So that is definitely a way to do it. Glenn, hello from Tampa. Thank you for jumping on and telling us where you're from. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I really appreciate everyone coming on. Great questions. I wish we could get to all of them, but that's good that we have so many people on and asking questions. So hopefully we'll see you guys and gals again in about 2 weeks. Go out and use this as an opportunity to get educated, to build skills, to build networks. The last 5 years, deals have been tough. Opportunities are coming. This is the next chance for you to jump in and really create wealth. Obviously, we wish that none of us had to go through this, but we can't change it. So we might as well try to figure out how we can benefit from it and build a business that's going to benefit our families and other people, and then the communities that we're investing in. So be careful, but take action. Feel free to connect with me. I'm on Bigger Pockets, LinkedIn. If you Google Vantage Point Acquisitions, my website's vpacq.com. If you want to have a further conversation, there's a little contact us tab on there that comes to my email. And look forward to talking with you guys, everyone, some more. Have a great weekend and take care.